It was just making a big deal. You know, your dad's coming, your dad's coming. I was like, well, I can't wait to see my dad. And he came, he saw me, he kissed me, and he just left.
Yeah.
And I might still have that hold of my heart today.
What's up? What's up? What's up? It is another episode of Dear God Unscripted. As you can see, it looks a little different today. Today is a special episode. I get to sit down with one of my favorite people in the world, to be honest with you. For men's mental health, this June, we get to have a conversation, brother to brother, and just talk about what it looks like to be men, how we grew up, how we started, where we're going, and just have some fun. So I just want to introduce to you the person sitting next to me. This is a person that when you say like a brother, this is really like a brother. We both have brothers, and I could say for me that he's closer to a brother than I've had in my life, and I enjoy his presence. I enjoy his mentorship. I probably never told him this or don't tell him this all the time, but I really look up to him when it comes to mental health in my life. When it comes to mental health in my life, he was the first person that I saw up front that was very close to me that I saw was actually going to counseling and learning from counseling, giving me little nuggets. And he actually planted the seed that I've got to see water and grow in my life today. So I just want to introduce you to none other than my cousin, my friend, my brother, Ashyrii Ball.
Well, thank you for having me in your space. Thank you for having me on this great podcast.
Yeah.
I came quick. I came on time. I was diligent.
He was.
Because I see that you and your wife are serious about this.
Yeah.
And I'm here and I'm excited.
I'm excited too. No better time than now to pray. I guess I'll do it since we have a guest.
Right.
God, we thank you for today. We thank you for blessing us and bringing us here, Lord. We ask that you just sit us down, God, that you bring us to a place that we can have an open, honest, a real conversation, God, that we could break some strongholds in our life. We could talk about some areas in our lives that were low points and how you brought us up to raise us up in those points. God, we just ask that whatever it is we say today, that you help somebody out there to draw closer to you, to get over a hump in their life, and to start anew. We thank you for everything you've done and will do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You know what's funny? While we were praying, I remember, I don't even know if you remember this. You remember, I think I was in high school. You might have been in college. You moved in with us for a little bit while you're going to TSU.
Good times, baby.
It was a night that we were praying, and we were in the same bed, and we had grasped hands a certain way. You remember that?
Oh, this is a Christian podcast.
It is a Christian podcast, but that's a real moment that'll kind of go into some stuff that we'll talk into later. But I remember what I said, and it's a disclaimer. Like I say, there's real, unfiltered, this is raw.
This is about how you grew up.
About how you grew up. So looking back, I know it's wrong now because there's no right way to do this, but we grasp hands like this, right? And before we could even start praying, immediately I said, we got to start over. This the gay hold hands.
So this happened because I was in the streets. I was doing more hand holding than praying, baby.
Oh my goodness. So
mental health, you got to bring it up.
This is true. So this is real. Like as you know, as I'm thinking about it, it just lets you know for us and probably a lot of people out there, you grew up a certain way where manhood looked a certain way, where religion and spirituality looked a certain way. So I guess we can go into a little bit of, we'll start with you. How growing up in Beaumont shaped your life and how some things that you went through early on that kind of you learned later on that were, like you put earlier, that were not necessarily trauma or could have been trauma, but some things that happened in your life early on that kind of shaped the man you became.
First off, that growing up in Beaumont is one of the things that I just put it together that this did shape my life. Mm-hmm. Growing up in Beaumont, because we started out in Detroit.
We did.
And to be honest with you, I was just like a fish out of water when we got back to Beaumont. Looking back now, you know, that move shaped a lot of the behaviors of my personality.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that until recently, just like, you know, sitting back, being quiet, being still, and, you know, paying attention to who I am.
Yeah.
You know, so when we were in Detroit, I felt like that was an introduction to the family dynamic, and that's still my reference to having a family dynamic.
Yeah.
At that time, my mother and father were married.
Yeah.
At that time, you were a baby.
Yeah.
And we stayed in an apartment complex, and on the other side of the complex was your mom and dad.
Yeah. We all were kind of real close.
There. Yeah. And she was my first babysitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, your mom was my first babysitter.
And even that itself is crazy.
All day.
I was just about to say, because she was really a baby herself.
They were still young. So
Yeah,
that's another thing. When you talk to people, they don't have a reference to their parents being that young. But I was there. So I have the reference. That's why you hear people talk to me a little different. I probably was the experiment baby.
Absolutely.
You know, you was the golden child.
Hey,
you know, you got plans. You got plans for people. But you get to practice on people.
Yeah, he was.
You know?
He was the first boy
grandchild.
Grandchild out of the brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So he's the oldest. He's the patriarch, like we like to say. But
all my uncles got to practice on me.
But when you say, like, looking at Uncle Jerry, looking at your dad, looking at my dad, you got to see them all kind of young. And to be honest, me, you, and we kind of grew up with them. I feel like, and kind of the things, like you say, they were practicing or experimenting. They were learning how to be men. At the same time, they were learning how to be fathers. So I guess the question I have is, looking at them as they were then, how do you think, or what did a man look like to you when you were younger? What was it? What do you think the definition of a man was?
Definition of a man was somebody who had a family, somebody who had a wife, a woman, somebody who had kids. And I think that having that, feeling that definition of what a man was early, you know, because they always say now that we're older, now that everything's come full circle, you can't be a man without a woman.
Yeah.
You know, and they speak about that in the biblical sense. So the thing that I would say is, you know, they were close, but they all had wives at that time. Even now, Uncle Jerry would say, you know, who else was young like this, having a wife, having kids, having a family, flexing.
Yeah.
At this young age, being able to be responsible and take care of a family like that.
Yeah.
Well, the other people that followed his lead were his brothers. So all of these people had families young, holding it down, going to work, you know, pouring into their children at a really young age. And that's just what it was. I saw several men that were young being married and having families.
You're right. Now that I think about it, like, we are older now than they were when they were raising us.
Right.
Like, a lot older.
Right.
You know, so you're right. It's kind of funny because I don't have kids yet, but you do, Jackson.
And I'm not married yet, but you are. And another thing they said growing up, they thought that he was my daddy's son and I was Uncle Jackie's son.
All the time we would get mistaken for each other.
And they would say it's based on personality. Jordan's so outgoing and Ashyrii's so mature.
Yeah. What do you think made you so mature?
I had men in my life. I had role models. And that shapes a lot of my views, good, bad. But I have strong opinions because of what I was able to see.
100%. We definitely had some strong-minded men in our family that taught us how to be men, but also how to be caring, how to be collected, how not to let too many things get, you know. I mean, yeah, they had their times where they got high and low, but they always were like a solid foundation and a rock when it comes to our family. All of them, to be honest with you. All right, so now we back. How old were you when we moved back to Beaumont?
Might have been 4 or 5. It was right before kindergarten.
Okay. So you left, y'all left first, and then we left not too long after. Well, probably about 2 years after.
So what ended up happening was me and my mom came back. My dad came back a little bit after that. A whole nother story.
Yeah.
But looking at who I was at that time, like I say, this shaped me. So me coming back home, you know, having all these new cousins, having grandparents, and, you know, actually getting to meet those people, being around them, You know, we have 100 cousins.
Yeah, and that's not even a slight.
Right.
That's like really.
So it was an exciting time.
Yeah.
But remember, I had a family dynamic. I was with my mother and my father.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I was at my mom's house. And they was like, your daddy's coming back. They was just making a big deal. You know, your dad's coming. I was like, well, I can't wait to see my dad. And sad story, but he came, he saw me, he kissed me, and he hopped in the car with Michael and Dwight.
From our older cousins.
This is his cousins like we're cousins.
Yeah. So
they all went to high school together. They all the same age. Mm-hmm. And he just left.
Yeah.
And I might still have that hold in my heart today. Mental health.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how do you think, looking back now, how do you think that may have affected you or shaped, you know, being such an exciting time? Like, yeah, my dad's coming. Then they get there and it's like a deflate that balloon.
You start to internalize things in that way. Mm. You know, I have a son now and I try to see him every day. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm not in the same house with his mother. I try to talk to him, do things, and they say, well, you know, you could do these things. You know, you get frustrated because you're not married. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you talk to the older men in your life, or even, you know, the women, and they say, well, you know, you need to do things like this. You need to do things for yourself. Yeah. But I remember that memory of, you know, running off. Yeah. You know, ran off to do whatever. Now, looking back, now that I'm 35, I have a brother. He was on tour. He had other kids to see. Yeah. He had another son to see. Yeah. Which is another aspect of why we're brother cousins.
For sure. Y'all were what they would call Irish twins.
Irish twins, ghetto twins. We were born within 6 months of each other. Yeah. So, like I say, when I got back, I was around cousins, grandparents. But when he got back, I started spending a lot more time with a brother. I had a brother. And so that was an interesting dynamic. Yeah. So like I say, looking back at how I internalized that versus what was really happening, now that I'm 35, that's something that I'm able to correct.
Got you.
That was not a trauma. That was an injury.
Got you. I like that. It's not a trauma, it's an injury. When you say not a trauma, but an injury, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like?
In a lot of the literature that I read, you know, when they talk about raising children, or they talk about having a spouse, or, you know, just things that are relational, the way that you relate to people. Let's say you say something that's not quite right, or you do something that's not quite right. How you correct that? Well, the thing that they call it is an injury. You might have injured somebody, as opposed to you were toxic or you created trauma. When they speak about trauma, they specifically are referring to something that happened to you that made you not feel safe, not feel protected. As in, the world is not safe. People are not safe. People are not protecting me. And that's more of a trauma.
Gotcha.
You have things where you feel slighted or disappointed. Those are injuries. And they can be corrected as well, but they're not as earth-shattering.
So they don't have a heavier impact, or if you correct them or recognize them, they don't have as heavy or heavier impact on your life moving forward.
Correct.
Basically, got you. Okay. I like that. Now, I heard you say, in this instance, internalizing emotions. Can you talk a little bit about how you saw, specifically men, talk about emotions when we were growing up? Well, or was it even talked about?
One thing when you have young parents, a lot of times they are just coming from being in a position of being taken care of.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm 35. Okay, well, I haven't been in my mom's house for over 10 years, 15 years. But if you're 22 having children, if you're 19 having children, your mind has not shifted into, I can be responsible for another person. You're just doing it. So what I could say is I think that they had a lot of good principles. And the way that they introduced them were completely different than they would do now. Or I would do now.
I totally agree. For me, like you say, my parents were super young. My mom was 19 going on 20. My dad was 24 going on 25, a little bit older, but we kind of grew up together. And I can remember times where, especially talking to my dad. So with my dad, his father didn't really talk much to him based on our conversations. And I felt like he talked too much sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Instead of, one thing I always, once I got older and kind of learned myself, was I can recognize how, I think I took a class in college that talked about like emotional styles and listening styles and argumentative styles. But one thing that I could recognize that he did a lot was listen to respond, not necessarily understand. And what that means is he's listening with the intent to either correct, defend, or something like that, with instead of listening with the heart or the mindset to just understand and hear where the other person's coming from. And I say that to say, I can now that's totally different. Now we can have conversations, open conversations all the time, but realizing that, okay, I'm almost 10 years older now than my dad was when he had me. And it took me how long, basically, until I was 27, 28, 29, 30 to really figure that out and learn it. When I go back to how those things kind of shape my emotions, I could probably say that because of that, I might have had some resentment, but because I got over it, now I can forgive and understand, like, okay, he was a kid having a kid. So nobody really taught him how to, he didn't have the tools. He had the heart, he had the mindset to want to, but not necessarily the tools growing up.
I believe we call that reactive parenting.
Okay.
As opposed to proactive parenting. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of reactive parenting as well. Mm-hmm. But my dad was very proactive. Even with being with the unconventional punishments. Mm-hmm. We got positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, corporal punishment.
We definitely got that. I remember one time, and that might have been the last time I spent the night at your house. And y'all lived off 23rd. I can't remember. Yeah. You remember that? I can't remember what we was playing or something, and we was too loud, made some noise, and he made us like hang off the side of the bunk bed. You had some bunk beds at the time, and he whooped us, and I was like, yeah, I ain't coming back over here.
Yeah, that was a story that I share, you know.
That is, but you know, growing up at the time, yeah, it seemed crazy. A lot of stuff.
Well, we were doing crazy things. I remember one time I had all the cousins at the house, and we were playing like WCW wrestling, and I put Jordan in the closet. And I was like, yeah, just sit up in here.
And I'm a kid at the time. So, you know what I'm saying?
We were all children.
But they older than me.
We were not 10.
They used to pick on me. Children. You know what I'm saying? I was the youngest and the smallest Jordan, at the time.
You know, usually when an older person messes with you, you just take it and be like, oh, this is just what people do. No, Jordan ran out the room and was like, I'm telling.
We all going down, baby.
Right. So my dad, he's never been solid. He's not solid.
Hey.
So he came back in the room and he said, hey, you get in there. I was like, well, when are you?
Yeah.
They played that game for an hour. I was still in that closet.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
But that's not the only story where he has not been solid.
We got plenty of. We'll get to that. I know which one he's talking about. I know which one he's talking about.
So when Jordan moved back to Beaumont, they had a house.
Uh-huh.
A 2-story house.
Used to have rigs.
They had
not rigs.
They had a little book nook at the top.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the book nook and saying, your window broke? And he was like, yeah, it's been like that.
You know,
he had to be 3 or 4 lying like that.
I think it was 5 or 6.
Okay, he was.
Yeah, I was about 6.
5 or 6. But he said to me that it was broken for a long time.
Yeah.
What was the next part of that story?
So, all right.
How did it break?
I'll tell you exactly how it break. Now that we older, I could tell the story. We already got in trouble for it. So I came home from school. It was my room. In my room upstairs, I had my bed, and then maybe about 4 or 5 feet past that was the book nook that he's talking about. So I came home, and you know, like little kids do, we kick our shoes off. I kicked the shoe too hard this time. Went right into the window. Now, it broke. I ain't say nothing. Nobody heard it. I was just going to let it be what it was going to be. So we go fast forward. They done came over. They done left. I think y'all might have been gone a couple of days or something like that. And my dad just happened to come upstairs and see the broken window. And he asked me, he say, what happened? I say, you know what? I think Ashyrii broke that. But this goes back to when he was saying corporal punishment. I probably never said this, but at the time, was getting a lot of whoopings, man. We was kids. We was getting whoopings for everything. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't really, it was conversation, but it wasn't really conversation. Like I said, not listening to understand and kind of hear each other out. Growing up, we didn't really have a space to talk. I remember, you're a child, stay in a child's place, those same things that kind of repeat and, our cultural cycles, which of course are some things that I want to break in. I'm sure I know for a fact the Shire is breaking with his son. But, as we were growing up, like I probably got 2-3 whoopings that week already. And I was like, okay, I can't take another one. I can't take another one. So in my young thinking, I was like, all right, I'm just going to say he did it. They're going to be like, oh, okay, whatever. We get it fixed. Everybody forget about it. It's over. My parents decided to call them over there. And I think it had to be.
I was coming over probably like once or twice a week.
Yeah, they, like I said.
So we just going over there. My mom, she didn't say anything. We walk in the house. They all in the living room. Standing up.
Not even sitting. I remember that too. Soon as they walked through the door, and they didn't even get through the door good. We was having the whole conversation like in the door. So
he's not solid, but I won't lie.
He say, they asked the Shire, did you break the window? Shire, straight up. No, I didn't break that. Say, God.
Man, he told me that window bimbo. I asked him when I spent the night over here.
Over. So they
said that is enough.
Yep, and they left.
Turned around and walked out.
and went all the way back home.
So we walked out the door. They have like the little screen doors that close real silent.
Yeah.
So, we heard the big door just go boom. And all you heard was shortly after.
Shortly after that.
It was not shortly. It was immediately after. They slammed the door on us and started kicking since you know what.
Yeah, they let me have it that time. I won't forget that one. That was a good one.
But that will bring me to, parenting styles.
Mm-hmm.
My son is now 6, about to be 7, and he's probably gotten 2 butt whoopings.
Yeah.
What we would call, whoopings.
Yeah.
He's probably gotten 2 of those. And they make a lot of comments about the way that I parent. They say, oh, he's going to get a pop. He's going to get a pop. Oh, are you going to pop him?
Yeah.
No, Daddy, don't pop me. Don't pop me. That's a quote from my dad. When I go to the barbershop.
Yeah.
Same. But the one thing that I could say is, there is a lot of things that I'm battling as far as I've never talked to my father like that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of things came from me not being able to talk to my father. A lot of things came from me not being able to express to my father. Maybe, you see people say I was in danger.
Yeah.
I got hurt by someone.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the negative aspects of that type of punishment. So yeah, you might have somebody that is socially, they seem to be listening. Socially,
Correct.
They seem to be obedient, well respected, but at the same time, they're not communicating everything that you would like for them to communicate with you as a parent, as far as feelings, interactions with other people, whether that's adults or children. And one thing I could say is he over communicates with me. So yeah, I might not like the free nature in which I'm being criticized, but he has no problem with expressing his day and his feelings to me in a way that I have never been able to express to my father. And I'm 35.
Mm-hmm.
So for me not to be doing the things that I saw, I'm really going against the grain. This is new territory. I'm not comfortable at all in these positions, but I know that I want not a different outcome, because I feel like we turned out pretty good.
Absolutely.
But I do understand that at 35, certain things happen to his children that your parents should have known that this happened. Your father needed to know that this happened.
Yeah.
You needed to have that relationship with your father to be able to communicate what you were feeling. And those things are more valuable than socializing a child to be acceptable in a social setting.
I 100% agree. I remember probably one of my toughest internal battles, which actually came to a head. My parents, it's a story you probably don't even know. My parents, high school, I think I was going into my senior year. And, like you say, you never felt like you could have an open conversation, or you could really just talk freely, whether it be respectful, not respectful, whatever it is, just talk freely, be heard, be understood.
That was the expectation. It's not like you were bucking the system or you had a feeling of rebellion. It just was the expectation that this is how a child is and this is how a parent is.
100%. And I can remember, like, growing up, my father, like you say, I'm basically a PK. My dad's always been in the church, but I can remember he would use, like, honor your mother and your father, right? Or he'll use, like, a child stay in the child's place. But then growing up, on the flip side, which there is a flip side, yes, honor my mother and father, but what if your mother and father isn't honoring you? And not, when I say not honoring you, I mean like respecting your opinion,
And your boundaries.
respecting your boundaries, respecting your voice. And then you kind of, you're forced to, even though I feel I'm in this inner turmoil, on the outside, I still have to act like, or be like, or feel like, this is my dad, I have to respect him. This is my mom, I have to respect him, no matter how I feel or what the situation is. But I say that to say I was kind of leading into a story where it all kind of came to a head. And I think my parents, this was like the first time that it kind of, the light clicked for them, where it was like, okay, maybe it's something we can do differently. So I'm going into senior year, and I think you might have actually just moved out. So this was around that time. My sisters, I remember distinctly, they were standing like at the top of the staircase because I was getting in trouble downstairs. I honestly forget what we were talking about, but it was basically another one of the same conversations like we always have. You're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. There's no ask of, why, what's the other side of it, that type of situation. So it got to the point where personally I just had enough. And I said, I used one, maybe two explicits, but I said, y'all never listen. I'm tired of this, right? Like at the top of my lungs, yelled, and I remembered like the room went silent. Like my mom and dad didn't even know what to do. Like literally, they looked at each other and was like, and then I just walked off and nothing ever happened. I never got a whoop, I never got in trouble. And we really never really talked about it. Like we laugh about it today because, again, like I said, I remember my little sister standing in the stairs and Kirsten, who was the middle child of us, she say she tried it when she got older, but it ain't worked the same. Right. So they kind of learned from that, but they also learned that, okay, it's something that we're doing or not doing that caused them to have this type of outburst. So, I applaud you as far as when it comes to parenting. Like you say, you're not doing everything right, but you're taking, like Grandpa always used to say, take the meat, spit out the bone, right? You're taking the good from what we had. You're taking the mentorship. You're taking the leadership. You're taking the things that we were given that were tools, and then you putting your spin on them, and you trying to find a different avenue that, in all honesty, you kind of carving a path that's never been carved when it relates to like our family dynamic. So it's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna be awkward. It's gonna come with ridicule and all of that. But again, myself and the younger cousins that are coming behind us, they looking and they can say, okay, yeah, Ashyrii not perfect or we not perfect, but the way he raising Jackson, I gotta commend it.
I remember when I got back to Beaumont, I was like a little celebrity in the school. So your uncle plays football.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to do a whole factorial on you in front of everyone. We go in and they say, okay, well, tell us something about you. My name is Ashyrii and I'm this many years old. Okay, well, what else is there to know about you? Silence. Well, don't you have an uncle that plays for? Yes, he plays for the Detroit Lions. Have you ever been to any games? I've been to all the games.
Yeah, that's where we grew up.
Right. Oh, well, this is great. Let's talk some more about these type of things.
Oh, man. At the time.
I just was shying away from anything that brought extra attention to me.
Yeah.
That was traumatic. I didn't go home. I didn't talk about it. I just was like, Nobody talks to me, that'll be good.
So you feel like when it comes to that, do you feel like that kind of shaped how you communicated and growing up moving forward? Like how you internalize stuff or
Yeah, for sure.
stuff like that?
I think that, like I said, I already was somebody that was internalizing my feelings at that young age and showing excitement to a parent. Like, hey, I can't wait until we go here. I want to go to Disneyland. I wasn't that type of child.
Yeah.
I requested nothing.
Yeah.
Like you see kids like, oh, I want this toy off television. I never had the type of relationship or personality to ask for. And looking back, that is not typical. Every kid is watching cartoons and requesting a new Batmobile, requesting the Barbie dream house, the creepy crawlers. But like I said, I think that was just more so my personality. That brings me to another topic. Jordan is not solid. I used to go to Jordan's house, and if it was one controller, he would say, "This is my game."
Yeah, it's me, baby.
That's not the rule, dude. It's not the rules.
It's my house, my game. My house, my rules,
yes, you too familiar with me.
I'm a child.
No, every child does not do that.
I'm a child. This is me. But
player one right here, baby. This is player one, not player two.
You know what? Of our cousin group, I was the youngest. So like you were older than me, Lindsay, Farron, all of y'all. So I was the runt. You know what I'm saying? They used to pick on me. They used to always get first. And then when it came to my house, this is my domain. I can make the rules here if I can't make them nowhere else. So yeah, that was that.
A little terror, a little ball of something.
I might have been, yeah, for sure. I had some temper tantrums, some stuff going on. But, you know, now since we talk about it, they go in the silent struggles. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the reason I probably was so angry, so mad a lot of times as a child is because of not being able to talk to somebody or, you know, just the cousin stuff. I'm the smallest one. I remember they got videos of them dunking on me under the goal, wrestling, you know what I'm saying, losing and all of that stuff. You know, I was smaller. So
he was taking his wins where he could get his wins.
You know, I was taking my wins where I could get my wins. But, you know, there's something that as you grow up, thinking back, that kind of molds you into the person you are today. When he say outspoken, when he says, you know, some of the things that I am today is I can accredit it to when I was growing up feeling like I had to be silent or I was silenced or feeling like, you know, I didn't really have a voice or I was the smallest, I was the youngest, whatever they wanted to eat or whatever they wanted to do or whatever they wanted would always go first or they would get priority. And then, you know, growing up, I found my voice.
And I like how we are doing this because when you read a lot of this literature, whether it's for adults or for parents, you know, just generally going through life, they like to talk about the development of children. What were you going through as a child or how are you parenting? Saying no's is important. So that's a boundary. So if they weren't allowing you to say no, if you weren't allowed to refuse anything, like
you know, we wasn't
stuffing beats in your mouth.
You read my mind, boy. Like, Grandpa Ashyrii Ball didn't. Hey, you gonna eat your vegetables? Right. I remember so much.
And guess who was stuffing those beats down my mouth? His mama.
Yeah, she was.
She was like, "You gonna eat this?" Ain't nobody saying no.
Was in there. But you know, I got smart. I had to get smart early.
But that's the boundary.
Started the finesse. I put the vegetables in there. I got to go to the restroom. We spitting them right out, baby, in the toilet.
I was never like that. I was always military time.
Yeah.
If they going to give it to me, I
got to eat it.
It must be good. It's coming from them.
And I was the opposite of that. Like, I would look like I was obeying, but really, I had a different objective.
Yeah, so another thing about what you were saying about no, and I think that this is going to be a hard hitting because I know we are family and I know what we've been through. And I see this with my son now. So with being able to say no or being able to refuse a vegetable, let's not even say a vegetable. I don't feel comfortable around this person. You know, like kids, I don't want the kids. You know, these are all developmental things. But what that starts to do is you are establishing your boundaries. So you can identify effectively when somebody is violating your boundaries and when they're not. You know, so now it's about Jackson. Is somebody doing something to you? But more specifically, did you feel like you were in danger?
Yeah.
He can say, I felt like I was in danger, or I didn't feel like I was in danger. But he can express how he felt. But it's a struggle, even with me trying to keep that window open, him establishing what is danger. If they tell me that they're sorry, does that mean that it wasn't serious? Because the rule is, they say they're sorry, then you just go to the next thing. But when they start to take hard lines about, you cannot say no, this is not time for you to talk, that's when it's easier for people to violate your boundaries at an older age. That's how it presents.
Yeah.
It could have been happening that whole time. You weren't able to communicate it. But now that you're older, it's time to be able to communicate it to yourself. And I think we are out of practice of that.
What you mean?
Not only do I like what's not like what's happening, I just feel like I had a boundary and I never was able to express it. So I'm being reactive.
Yeah.
I'm not just mad, I'm upset, but I can't be upset because I'm being reactive. You got to identify these things and communicate them.
I didn't speak up about my boundaries ahead of time. So now that it's a point where, okay, I feel like my boundary is not being respected, for me, I know it probably looked like silence. I'm so angry that I'm just silent. Like, I would rather not express that you crossed the boundary because I don't want to. I mean, it's all situational, but maybe I don't want to hurt your feelings, or maybe I don't want to, it's happened. I don't want this conversation to go a certain way, and then, now you feel a certain way about me or whatever it is. But that inner turmoil that you're going through looks like, what does it look like for you? I know for me, it looks like silence. It looks like I just stray away from, or I just.
Well, because of how I grew up, not expressing it, I think that first, after going to therapy, which is a step that a lot of people stop on, which is like a social media step. I know that this is happening to me and I want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
It seems like we're over inundated with people telling you how somebody else is doing it.
Yeah.
You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You just need tools. I have identified what's happening to me. I've identified that this is something that I don't like. Okay, what's the next step to identifying? I got to put something into practice, right? I got to be able to communicate effectively. I got to be able to go to work. I got to be able to deal with my significant other. I've got to be able to deal with the problems that come up professionally, as a parent, as a family member. And I've got to be able to be in a position where these relationships will continue to grow and flourish. It's not, oh, you did something to me, period. It's no, you did something to me, and I'm sorry that I didn't communicate my boundary, but this is a boundary for me, and this is how I would like to be treated. That's how you make healthy relationships as a man, being masculine. That's a masculine tenet.
And doing that is not, because I know it probably get misconstrued a lot, it's not feminine or it's not effeminate. A man is somebody who can communicate effectively. A man is somebody who can say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, this is how I feel in this situation, and this is how we should be able to move forward from it, or move away from each other if you're going to continue to break those boundaries.
And that is something that I saw with my son. It didn't all come from me, but somebody at school was saying something about him, and I told him, I said, well, we need to start telling jokes about them. Not the most productive thing, but this is what I was taught, right?
Yeah, that's how we grew up.
This is what I was taught. And he said, I'm not like that. I don't want to do that. So I had to take a step back, and I said, okay, son, well, this is what you do. You go up to her and you say, hey, I don't like that you said that about me. And if you continue to say things like that, I'm not going to play with you. He did that. That's a figure. He did it.
Yeah.
He did it. I was able to communicate with him. And thank God he wanted to communicate that to me. And I follow up with him. I say, hey, do you still play with X, Y, whoever it was? And he said, yeah, we play. They don't do it anymore. And I was like,
Good.
that really worked. That really did something. Yeah.
It did. I love that. But that comes back to breaking something that probably was communicated from generation to generation, how to handle this type of situation a certain way. And then you coming in and cutting how we would have been taught to handle that situation, and our parents would have been taught, and their parents before that, and starting something new.
What's up, guys? It's Kiera, and I had to steal my spot back on the couch for just a moment to close out this episode. You know, my husband Jordan and his brother cousin Ashyrii were talking for 2 hours. So you know we had to split this episode up into 2 parts. And apparently Nyla, whose tail is wagging here in front of me, wanted to make a guest appearance as well. But I just want to thank Jordan and Ashyrii for their vulnerability and what they shared with us today. And I'm definitely looking forward to part 2. In part 2, they're going to talk about some of the low points that they've had in their lives and how they've leaned on God, but also on community and on counseling to get through those low points. And they also talk about what they hope to see in the next generation, what kinds of children they want to raise, with Ashyrii already being a dad and with Jordan hoping to be a dad. So with that, I'll close us out in prayer, and then we'll see you next week. Holy Spirit, thank you so much for today and the way that you've moved in this conversation. God, thank you for being so good. I thank you for Jordan and Ashyrii and for their vulnerability and their willingness to have this conversation, not only with each other, but in front of the people who may be watching this. I pray for men, God, with it being Men's Mental Health Month, but really all people, that you lead and guide us to you, but also to the resources and community that we need to be the healthiest versions of ourselves, the versions of ourselves that you designed us to be. It's in the mightiest and matchless name of Jesus I pray. Amen. Holy Spirit, do your thing.